Back to the Viking Update Show, one of our many Viking shows at TalkNorth.com these days. This one is the original. This is the OG. Two writers talking about the Vikings. John grew up watching the Vikings, has covered them extensively over the years. I came here to cover the Vikings in 1990. I've been covering them ever since. And guess what? The franchise continues to be absolutely fascinating. Today, we will talk about Jaire Alexander. We'll remember Jim Marshall. We'll talk about Alan Page. We'll talk about Vikings writer Lindsey Young's new book. And because we have to, we'll talk at least a little bit about Aaron Rodgers. The Viking Update Show is presented to you by Giggly THC Beverages and Onyx Hunt, and we're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services studio.
That first sip of coffee on a summer morning. Sunshine. Caffeine. What's better? How about water so good it makes your coffee jealous? Water from Aquarius, your authorized independent Connecticut dealer. Enjoy sparkling dishes, cloud-soft laundry, and worry-free water from every faucet. Likely for less than your daily iced coffee. Enjoy up to 25% off a new Connecticut system and schedule your free water analysis at AquariusHomeservices.com. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended.
Join us after the Twins Day game on Thursday, June 12th at Parlay Kitchen and Bar for the Talk North Sports Report live show presented by Giggly THC Drinks. Catch myself, Mark Rosen, Lavelle E. Neal III, John Krawczynski, and our special guest, five-time WNBA champion Rebecca Brunson. Reserve your VIP spot now at fanhq.com. Don't miss out. The news of the day, we were talking here on Monday morning, and earlier Monday morning, the Packers announced that they were releasing Jaire Alexander. He's a very good cornerback who has had injury problems. The Packers offered him a one-year deal. It was mostly incentives. He did not like that, so they ended up parting ways. A bunch of teams are going to want him. What do you think of him? What do you think of his fit with the Vikings? And what do you think of the chances of the Vikings actually landing him?
I mean, we talked last week, Jim, about you think we generally like their cornerback room, but adding someone of his resume and stature is certainly intriguing to me. I mean, and how many times have we seen over the years a Packer leave probably with a chip on his shoulder and come to the Vikings and play very well. So I think that I would be intrigued. Certainly, there's a couple things I'd be concerned about. One is the injuries. The second thing that I would be at least have to do some homework and due diligence on is that Mark Murphy, the Packers president, said, essentially today is like, great player, but we're used to playing without him. And that's not usually what you hear when a divorce is amicable. I do think that there were things behind the scenes there for quite a while that the two sides were in real conflict. And so, what is he like from a character perspective? What does he bring from that end of the table? We certainly know he and Justin Jefferson have had some run-ins on the field. So all of those things would have to be examined and considered and investigated. But from a pure talent standpoint, if he is healthy, man, that would be a heck of a guy to bring in. And when it's happening this late in the offseason, maybe you can get some kind of a discount on, at least for a 1-year deal or something like that. I'd certainly be looking long and hard at it for sure.
He, in terms of football ability, skill, he's perfect. I mean, last year they brought in Stephon Gilmore. Gilmore was very good for most of the season. It felt like he faded a little bit toward the end. Alexander is obviously in his prime. When he plays, he's fantastic. He's a top 10 cornerback in the NFL. He would allow Murphy. He would give you a great outside corner to go with Murphy being an excellent slot corner. Takes the pressure off the young guys. He'd be ideal. But as you said, it's not that simple. If it were just as simple as him being a good player, the Packers just would have kept him or made him a better offer at least. I'm really intrigued. I also think that if he's going to fit in and excel anywhere at this point in his career coming off this situation, the Vikings might be one of the better places for him to land. Brian Flores commands respect. Players like playing for the Vikings organization. They like playing for O'Connell. He would be able to fit into what could be a great defense. So it really just comes down to, can you pay him enough to keep him happy where he's not going to cause a problem?
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times we have seen this sort of scenario play out where a player will take less money to play for another team, but not the team that they're on currently. And I'm not saying that Jaire Alexander would be excited about some sort of a discounted rate to play for the Vikings or any other team. But I do think when this happens and when they get out into the free agent market and really get a feel for what the water is like and what their options are, they can sometimes come to Jesus a little bit with the money aspect of things. And I do think I agree with you totally, Jim. If the Vikings go to Jaire Alexander and say, hey, look, man, you've missed some time over the last couple of years. Your exit from Green Bay was a little messy. Come here, play, and then after a year, you'll either get a big payday value to the point where usually there's not a huge deal waiting for the form to do. And oh, by the way, you might be able to get a little payback against the Packers twice, in this upcoming season as well. So there's a lot of really compelling reasons for Jaire Alexander to come here outside of a bank-breaking financial situation.
Yes. And I just don't know enough about him or about how deep that problem is actually were with the Packers organization to know whether it's all about the money or if it's about career building or if it's about winning. I mean, obviously the Packers have a very good team. So if it was just about winning, he could have stayed there and had some confidence that team's going to go someplace. I mean, I almost feel, I spent so many years being identified as not a Vikings homer. It feels weird to say things like this, but I feel like the Vikings are probably the best fit for him.
Yeah. I mean, and there's certainly something went wrong there, Jim, other than just him getting hurt, because there were reports last year about is he going to play? Is he not going to play? Where, kind of like the absences it didn't seem like they were technically all the way excused or both sides were completely on board with how things were going. And so there was some drama, some mistrust, something that happened with the relationship between Alexander and the Packers. And I don't know if that is an Alexander problem or a Packers problem or both. And so you certainly would be really kind of compelled, if you're the Vikings, to dive all the way into that and see, is this what you want to bring in? But so often when you get these guys on, what I would anticipate would be a short deal, kind of a prove it year type of a situation, you're going to get Alexander at his most motivated, at his most invested, and then you see what you can do coming out of that. And so, barring kind of some sort of discovery of real red flags from a personality, makeup, character standpoint, look at the available options and he's got to be at the very top of the list. And I have to think that the Vikings have to be at the very top of his list in terms of teams that offer opportunity on a winning team with a good defensive coordinator, with talent around him. There's just a lot to like for both sides of this equation here.
No doubt about it. Hey, if you want to meet John Krawczynski in person, if you want to meet the great Rebecca Brunson in person, they are part of our panel on Thursday, 4 p.m. at Parlay Kitchen and Bar, downtown Minneapolis. That's the new sports bar underneath Union Rooftop in downtown Minneapolis. We're timing it so if you want to go to the Twins game, or if you want to skip work, get out of work early, whichever, you can just drop by. We're going to be there 4 to 5 after the show. Steve Janicek from the 1980 Miracle on Ice team is going to sign autographs. The lineup for our discussion: Mark Rosen, MC, John Krawczynski, Rebecca Brunson, Lavelle E. Neal III, and myself. And we will be giving away a lot of stuff: bobbleheads, memorabilia, tickets, merch. Stop on by. Even if we don't mind you coming in late, those shows usually go a little bit long, and we will be around to hang out and talk. And that show, like so many other things on this network, sponsored by Giggly THC Beverages. Giggly THC Beverages, I'm drinking them all the time. I love the flavor. I love the fact they're made of fruit juice and really few other ingredients. You can get the 5 milligram THC, the 10 milligram THC, and you can wake up without any regrets. No hangover, no grogginess, no bad feelings. Tastes great, healthy, and no regrets. I don't know what more you want out of something you have on a weeknight when you're sitting around watching a ball game. Giggly THC Beverages, giggly.com. Promo code GigglyNorth will get you a discount on your first order. Thanks to them. Also want to talk to you about Onyx Hunt, or in this case, Onyx Fish, same app. The weather is warming up, and that means it's time to put your augers away and time to grab the boat. Let Onyx Fish help you find the next best bite. The Fish app offers the most comprehensive fishing tool for increasing your success. Use the Fish app to find new places to fish and sort lakes by species, abundance, tropher, and keeper potential. Onyx Fish also shows you hot spots, lake-by-lake regulations, and private and public land ownership information. Download Onyx Fish on the App Store or go to onyxmaps.com/fish to get more information about the app that is changing the game. We'll probably get more into Jaire, week by week if he stays on the market for a while. Right now, though, let's talk about Jim Marshall. First of all, I want to recommend you the Jeff Diamond, Vikings and NFL Insider, former Vikings general manager. He had some great memories of Jim Marshall. He worked up his way through the organization. He got to know Jim Marshall back in the day. Really good stuff on Jim there. From my perspective, I have to admit I didn't know Jim very well. I talked to him a couple times. We had a lot of mutual friends, though, including Mark Rosen. And, when he talked to former players about him, people in the organization, I used to talk to Fred Zamberletti, the venerable trainer, all the time about Jim Marshall. And they said for all the great players, Jim Marshall was kind of the leader. He was the guy that people looked up to. He was a guy who would play with a broken bone if he had to, which is proven by his game streak. And he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I kind of in the same boat as you, Jim, in terms of I met him a few times, shook his hand, had a couple of brief conversations, but didn't know him personally the way that I've known a lot of other Vikings. But I grew up here, and so I certainly, from a very young age, knew about the Purple People Eaters, about kind of the backbone of this franchise, the defining group of this franchise. And I think that the best way I can describe Jim Marshall is that even though he had been retired for decades, even though the Vikings have been playing indoors since 1981, there is still this presence, that team, that franchise are present, like right, up close and personal, or whether there is just this sort of aura that hangs around the franchise. It is from Jim Marshall, Alan Page, Carl Eller, those guys, Doug Sutherland, Gary Larson, like that is what has defined this franchise forever. In the Hall of Fame, like Eller and Page are, I still believe he's I've said it, like he's the purplest people eater. He is the Viking of all Vikings. And you and I have covered this team for a very long time. And even though he has not been in a uniform forever and ever, you still him. There was no better experience than sitting down with Fred Zamberletti and just talking the old days. And he would tell stories, and then he would get his eyes would squint, and his puff was how great he was, what a leader he was, like all of those things. And so I just think that he still is the guy in this organization, more than Alan Page, more than Carl Eller, more than Randy Moss, more than Chris Carter. We've had just amazing, amazing players who have come through here. And yet I think if you were to ask most people who really knew, like, Jim Marshall's the guy. And so I just think that his overall presence, what he did for the franchise, by people who really knew him, I think is unparalleled. And that is saying something on a franchise that has had so many just all-time great players.
No doubt. And I used to have a routine when I was covering Viking road games. I'd always have my pregame meal with Fred Zamberletti, and he'd sit down and he'd just start telling stories. And he was an old school guy. He loved the guys who play, and he was an old school guy. He was an old school trainer. He was one of Bud Grant's many right-hand men in that organization. And he liked nothing better than somebody who would play through an injury or play through pain. And that was Jim Marshall. He was the guy. I mean, I still remember when I started covering the team, anytime a player had, obviously they weren't pushing people through broken bones or, major muscle tears, but anytime somebody had kind of an owie, what they'd do is they'd give him to Fred, and Fred would take him over to the side field and just wear their asses out. Just basically sending the message, do you really want to complain about, soreness? Do you really want to complain about a minor sprained ankle? Because the work you have to do to get back on the field is going to be way harder than the work you would have to do if you just stayed on the field.
Yeah. You heard like that. You heard the stories of how Marshall would just be on his deathbed for the entire week, and they would get to Sunday and you didn't really know, you weren't really sure, but you kind of knew. And then he would walk through the doors and say, all right, let's go. And, I remember we were both there when Favre surpassed Marshall and, on the consecutive games played streak. And, I thought that Brett did an amazing job of trying to downplay his achievement in the face of Marshall's, because he was a defensive lineman who did this. And even though quarterback is an incredibly demanding position, to be able to do it the way that Jim Marshall did at defensive line, the way that they played back then, with how physical it was, with how demanding it was, with how much, you're just going hand-to-hand combat every single snap. Like that, even though Brett has surpassed him, even though it's been a very, very long time since he was on the field, like I just think that still that mark is something that will never be touched from a defensive lineman, from a position player at all, other maybe quarterback, because of how they're protected these days. And what a legacy that is. Like, I think that, there's the unfortunate thing about running the wrong way on the play and all that. But like, what I do is I hate that is something that is mentioned pretty high in remembrances of him. It's Jim Marshall, the guy who scooped up the fumble and went the wrong way. No, it's Jim Marshall, the guy who played 270 games who started 270 games in a row. It's Jim Marshall, the guy who served as a 14-year captain on one of the most successful NFL teams of all time. Even though they didn't win Super Bowls, like they were always there. They were always in the running. It was Jim Marshall who was really the leader of one of like the groups. The Vikings defensive line of the 1970s is an iconic like position group in NFL history. And those are the things that we really need to be emphasizing and we really need to be looking at. And just an incredible legacy to easily wipe aside one weird, funny, ridiculous play in a 20-year career.
No question about that. Let's talk about another purple people eater here in a second. First, we do want you to hear from TalkNorth.com star Michael Russo for Clamshell Beach Resorts.
Hey, have you been dreaming of a lake cabin lifestyle with boating, fishing, and family fun in northern Minnesota? Well, lately I've thought a lot about how cool it would be to have a getaway like so many Minnesotans. And if you're like me, you probably think that owning your own lakeside getaway is beyond your budget. Well, if you think lake cabin real estate prices keep going up, well, think again. This is Russo, and I'm here to tell you there is an affordable way to enjoy a cabin lifestyle and all that goes with it. And yes, I said affordable. I founded a clamshell beach resort, which is located on the Whitefish chain of 14 lakes for you and your family to enjoy. Here's how. Clamshell has lake homes that offer deeded fractional ownership, and the keywords there are deeded and fractional. You own it. Imagine having 5 weeks a year to enjoy Clamshell with its beaches, pool, and lodge that's full of kids' activities. Is golf your game? There's a great golf course right across the road. Like winter sports? Well, you can go ice fishing, cross-country skiing, or snowmobiling right out the door at Clamshell. And there's no maintenance, no grass mowing, no snow removal. It's done all for you. And you can own a share of Clamshell Beach Resort at an affordable price. To learn more about ownership opportunities at Clamshell Beach Resort, go to cottagesonwhitefish.com or contact Pat Egan at 612-220-9819. That's cottagesonwhitefish.com or Pat Egan at 612-220-9819.
I'm talking about my friend Scott Dayton, who runs Twill by Scott Dayton in the Edina Galleria. That is the Johnny O symbol. I wear a lot of Johnny O stuff. I love the hats. They're very comfortable. Have a lot of their shirts. I have their pullovers. I have their T-shirts. I have, I'm wearing this is a Peter Millar golf shirt that's nice enough. You can wear it with underneath a sport coat if you wanted to. He only picks out brands that he loves. He's the only Peter Millar crown shop in the upper Midwest. And he is because he has such great stuff from Peter Millar in there. It's one of my favorite brands. And I recommend going in there. Also, this time of year, it's a great time to buy somebody a graduation gift. A Twill gift certificate is ideal. You have, seniors in high school, seniors in college looking for job interviews. You have, or they might want to just have really nice golf gear. You can dress head to toe, whether it's golf, business meetings, casual, everywhere. Every time I cover a game now or do a Talk North event, I wear all Twill stuff. So go to twillmn.com, check out what they have, stop in, tell them we sent you, and buy a gift certificate. Believe me, the person who gets it will appreciate it. Now here's Talk North star. I actually want to tell you about one other product before we get back to the other Purple People Eater, and that is Natrium, natrium.com, Natreum. I've told you a lot about the balms that help with muscle soreness, joint soreness, everything else. Another great thing about Natrium is the sleep aids. I use the Goodnight Moon. There's also a Natrium brand that I've tried that I really like, and just helps you ease into sleep. It helps you stay more soundly asleep, helps you wake up feeling good. I don't know what can benefit your life more than that. So Natrium is just a place I go when I want to feel better in any way. I recommend going to the store in St. Louis Park, checking out all the products, talking to the sales representatives who can steer you in the right direction, whether it's for the right flavor, the right delivery system, the right dosage, the right ingredients. They can help you with that. Once you know what you like, then you go to natrium.com, order what you like, and you will like what you get there. So let's talk about the other Purple People era I wanted to get to today, and that is Alan Page. I've been lucky that in recent months working on some project. I worked on a George Floyd project. I got to talk to Alan or Justice Page, I should call him, at length about that. And then I did a story on Lindsey Young, the Vikings.com writer, who's written a children's book, Olivia the Brave, a children's book about anxiety and worry. And she said that Alan Page showed up for a book launch along with Aaron Jones. So, I mean, once again, I don't know Alan Page as well as some other people like Mark Rosen, but every interaction I have with him, I just find him to be just, we're very lucky that he ended up playing for the Vikings. We're very lucky that he ended up staying in Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, he's another one who I've been able to have a few conversations with, shake hands, but more have observed him, kind of been around in the orbit, but never kind of right in the inner circle of it. But there's no one like it that has a more almost powerful presence than he. I mean, he not only is he literally one of the greatest football players of all time, but he is a Supreme Court justice. He is a fierce advocate for civil rights. He is a an incredible, empath and just, it seems like just a human being overall. And we see the stuff on social media where he's, running around the lake when it's, 30 below zero and his beard is all frozen, like back in the 60s and 70s when he played at Met Stadium. And just an unbelievable, just figure in not only in football history, but certainly in this state's history. Like he belongs in the discussion, in the fabric of just Minnesota, and to see what he's been able to do, and to see the way that he has sort of transitioned his impact from player to judge, and now in this sort of post-judicial life, it seems to be he's much more kind of involved in the intimate sort of impact kind of things, of going to a book launch for Lindsey, doing smaller, quieter things that I'm sure change the lives of everyone that he interacts with. But, still doing, bigger projects and stuff, but not sort of the sweeping effect that he had when he was Supreme Court justice. But, I'll admit that when I'm in and around him, like, I'm certainly intimidated. Like I like all that he has accomplished and everything that he has done and how intelligent that he is and how worldly that he is. I mean, it's incredible. He walks into a room and he fills that room with just his presence and you just feel it. And it's incredible.
Yeah. Last time I talked to him, we had a long talk about George Floyd and America in general. And I thanked him because when I started this podcast network, one of the first shows I did was an interview show. And, he invited me out to his house. I sat there with him and his wife. His wife sadly has passed. And it was just domestic bliss, just a nice couple, generous as heck, open, funny. And, and let's be honest, a lot of former football stars struggle with leaving the NFL. They struggle with injuries, with brain injuries. And it's so heartening to see someone like him who's just so sharp. He also, not only did he support Lindsey's book, which I highly recommend for anybody who has a child who deals with anxiety, but he also has written his own children's books with his daughter, Cammie. And one of the books, I can't remember the exact title, but talks about his perpendicular pinky. And that's another classic thing about Alan is that his I think it's the pinky on his right hand basically goes this way. And he never got it fixed. So he'll wave at you and you're like, okay, which way are you pointing? It's just another cool thing about Alan Page that he didn't fix his finger. He uses, and it ends up being in the title of the children's book. Yeah.
And like, that is one thing that so just humanizes him even more to me because, he had this great football career. He went on to do so many more important things. And so you look at him as this very cultured, very worldly, person who rises above the, I'm just a football player type of discourse and view. But do I think that maybe there's a part of him that keeps that thing that way to just kind of as a badge of honor, as like, hey, like, no, I was the real deal back in the day. It's just, and if you have any questions about that, let me shake your hand and let me let you feel exactly what I went through. And maybe there is a little bit of a flex in that as well, which is cool, which is something that I cannot blame him for as well. And maybe I'm totally off base, but it's like, I know, like, I know I'm this big deal now, and I know I'm this scholarly, wise, old owl kind of thing. But back in the day, I could kick your ass, and I'm going to show you exactly how that happened. It's great stuff.
It is. Last note for this show. Again, thanks to all of our listeners and all of our sponsors. We'd appreciate it. Remember, if you can make it to Parlay Kitchen and Bar 4 p.m. on Thursday after the Twins game, we'd love to see you there. It will be a lot of fun. Aaron Rodgers finally signs, and I really believe that he signed as soon as he stopped getting attention for not signing.
It's entirely possible. I did see, some allusion to the possibility of he didn't want to sign and then be required to come right away to OTAs or all that stuff. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, okay. But yeah, maybe it was a little bit of like, you always have to wonder about the narcissistic angle of his motivations, whatever they are, because he certainly drips with it. And so I don't know. I'm going to be fascinated to see how this works with Mike Tomlin, with DK Metcalf, with the team that I think has some real holes and some real question marks. And so he's I think trying to ride in on a white horse, but I don't know if that horse is really kicking anymore.
That horse has a severe limp.
That's right. So it's going to be one of the, we're going to see plenty of it, all season long, whether it's for the good or the bad or otherwise, but it's going to be compelling, him in the black and gold and like, and trying to do something that I don't know that he's capable of doing anymore. Maybe I'm wrong about it, but it's going to be great theater the whole way through.
What I find fascinating is that the Jets, obviously a bad organization in a million ways, but they had talent and they had a number one receiver and they had two great running backs and
good offensive line
and he won 5 games with them. Mm-hmm. The Steelers, it feels like Tomlin has it's true that Tomlin has basically set the floor for that franchise at like 9 wins. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have losing seasons. So that the tension between those two things, the fact that Tomlin always finds a way to get to 9 or 10 wins, and Rodgers just came off a season where he went 5-12. How that plays out will be fascinating, and I am betting the under.
Yeah, it's I got to think about it a little bit more, but I have so much faith in Tomlin, in what he's been able to do there. And I know that I think, some maybe Steelers fans are getting a little impatient with kind of how things have gone in the last few years, but you look at what he's had to deal with at quarterback. You look at what he's had to deal with roster wise on the offensive side. Defense has usually been good. But it's sort of the inverse of the Jets experience. Rodgers was with the Jets, poorly coached, poorly led organization, really good roster. He's going to Pittsburgh where it's an impeccably led organization. It's going to be well coached, but do they have the talent to compete in a difficult division, in a difficult conference? And so, this is going to be a real like litmus test for what really matters in sports. I mean, if they do go and find a way to get to 10 wins or something like that, well, that's a bigger indictment of what was happening in New York with the coaching and all of that. But if not, maybe it's just the indicative of this is where Aaron Rodgers is at in his career, and he is no longer the guy who can carry an offense, who can kind of, just kind of change the trajectory of a group in and of himself, like he did in Green Bay for quite a while.
He might be changing the trajectory of Mike Tomlin's career if Tomlin,
one way or the other.
Yeah. I mean, if Tomlin ends up winning 7 games with future Hall of Fame quarterback, I don't think he would deserve to be fired, of course, but they just might feel like they need to make a change for some change. I mean, these so many coaching changes, GM changes, they aren't like these brilliant calculated moves. They're just, you kind of run out of options and you say, let's try something new.
Yep, exactly. And I think it was close to that last season. And I mean, the Steelers organization is as patient as they get. I mean, what did they had? Like 2 coaches in the last 40 years? Yeah. Or three with Cowher, Knoll, and Tomlin, like 3 in the last 40 years. So, so I do think that, there is a lot of patience for it. But it seemed like there was a lot of rumbling at the end of last season. Yeah. And so usually you might be able to survive one of those years. But yes, if you bring in a new quarterback, you bring in, you do kind of, all of these things. And then you have another year where you fall short. No matter what the roster situation is, Tomlin's been there forever. That would seem like a case of, all right, it's time to move on. Fresh voice. Let's start over. So I think this is a very much a make or break year for Mike Tomlin. Typically he's been in these situations before and he usually makes it. So I'm not going to rule anything out, but I think this is going to be a defining moment for him as much as anything with the Steelers.
Agreed. All right. Well, good stuff. Thanks to John for everything. Also check out the John Krawczynski show, our Timberwolves show at the network. We had our friend Chris Hines from the Star Tribune on to talk about his Anthony Edwards book. But hey, you know the deal. We have the best sports lineup in town. You can see part of that sports lineup at Parlay on Thursday, but you can always go to talknorth.com. We have Russo, Roy Smalley, Lavelle Neal, Kevin Gorg, John Krawczynski, Jeff Diamond, Alec Lewis, Don Mitchell, Mark Rosen. The list is so long I can never get to all of it. Just go to talknorth.com. You'll find something you like. We also have outdoor content. When you find a show you like, subscribe to your favorite podcast app. And thank you. We'll be back next week to talk more about the Vikings. We might know where Jaire Alexander is playing.